Welcome to the All Time Stories channel. Today I will tell you about the executioners. An executioner is a person who carries out executions, murders and torture. Surprisingly, the profession of the executioner still exists. It's hard to imagine that someone would say that since childhood he dreamed of becoming an executioner. Basically, this profession is not chosen. They become executioners under duress or inherit this position from their father. In ancient times, the executioner's work was performed by slaves, who did not have the right to choose. Often, representatives of the law made deals with criminals, sentenced to death. If they agreed to become legal killers, then they were released from execution. If the father is the executioner in the family, then the son almost certainly becomes the executioner. Moreover, they tried to select a bride for him from the family of another executioner or a gravedigger. If the executioner was childless, he had to prepare a candidate for his place. An executioner is a profession for life. He had no right to change it. Executioners, like representatives of other professions, have different qualifications. Highly qualified executioners were rare and their services were paid very expensively. Basically, they were rich people, although ordinary townspeople tried to avoid them. There were cases when a qualified executioner was invited to another country to execute someone famous. They knew the anatomy of human bodies, no worse than professional doctors, since they had the right to study corpses. Moreover, doctors were deprived of this opportunity, and often they bought the bodies of the dead from the executioners. The executioner independently carried out the execution from the murder process to the burial of the body. Although he always often had assistants, a carpenter and a flayer, a place was allocated for this in the cemetery, away from the graves of law-abiding citizens. When we hear the word executioner, we imagine a healthy man in a hood with slits for the eyes. But in reality, executioners did not hide their faces, except for the execution of high-ranking officials. After the execution, the executioner took the pants and shoes of the murdered man, so he tried to execute the unfortunate man more carefully, so as not to stain his clothes with blood. In many countries, executioners had uniforms. In the Middle Ages, it was enough to put a black glove on the executioner's window, and he understood that his services were needed. His home was usually located away from the houses of the townspeople, usually not far from the prison, and was often painted red. The executioners went to church and confessed, but they had to do this after all the townspeople. Almost everywhere, executioners took free food from the market, not because they had no money, but because people did not want to take money from their bloody hands. According to the law, executioners could not do anything other than executions, but they, too, are not alien to human weaknesses. Very often, executioners dried the organs of the dead, prepared potions from them, and sold them. Sometimes they performed rituals to exorcise demons. In the Middle Ages, people assumed that it was possible to expel evil spirits from the body through physical suffering, and executioners were the best masters of torture. The executioner also kept an eye on the local prostitutes and the owner of the brothel. They had to clear the streets of the city from corpses and carrion, drive out lepers from the city, catch stray dogs, and sometimes clean public latrines. There were also female executioners, and in terms of bloodthirstiness, sophistication of torture and cruelty, they overshadowed the male executioners. There were no executioners in all cities, and if necessary, the capital's executioner was invited. In Saudi Arabia, execution by beheading still exists today. It is performed by qualified representatives of the executioner dynasty.